Chapter 1. To be an essentialist, you must learn to cut off trivial things and focus on what truly matters. Our lives are so stuffed with tasks and responsibilities that we struggle to set our priorities straight. We often find it difficult to identify which of these tasks are the most important to us. Even if we go through our to-do list and pick out the ones we should prioritize, we still end up having too much on our hands. These excessive activities massively hinder our productivity. Fortunately, however, by adopting essentialism, by focusing on a few important tasks, we can set our priorities straight. There are 4 main points to essentialism. Do less, but do it better. The basic principle of essentialism is the endless task of identifying the less important things in your life to cut out, and excellently doing what's left over. Discard the idea that you need to accomplish everything, and choose instead specific directions in which you can excel. Essentialism is not about making little progress in many areas. Rather, choose a particular area and make giant strides in the things that matter most to you. Question yourself regularly and update your plans subsequently. The process of determining what's worth your time and what should be let go is continuous. As an essentialist, you have to be in constant pursuit of less but better. You should always decide whether what you're doing is worth it or if you should invest your time and energy in another area. Ultimately, once those few essential tasks have been extracted from the trivial many, an essentialist wastes no time in making sure the changes are put in place. While all that might sound simple, most of us are really far from the mark. You'll find out how far away most of us are from the essential approach in the next few sections. Chapter 2. If we let ourselves get swamped with tasks, we lose our ability to make choices for ourselves. Do you always say, "I have to" instead of "I choose to"? If so, then you are living the non-essential lifestyle. So many of us fail to take charge of our ability to choose through learned helplessness. That is, we've grown so familiar with the feeling of being overwhelmed that we approach our lives with utmost passivity. The term learned helplessness derives its origin from experiments conducted on dogs. In the experiments, the dogs were exposed to electric shocks. Some of them were given a lever that would stop the shocks. Others got a similar lever which had no effect, and the last group were given no shocks at all. Later, all the dogs were put together in a huge box divided in 2. One half emitted electric shocks and the other released none. All the dogs from the earlier experiment who had the opportunity to stop the shock or were given no shock at all ran to the shock-free side. However, the ones whose levers were powerless stayed in the shock zone and did not adapt. Simply put, they had learned to be helpless. If you give up your power to choose, you essentially give others permission to choose for you. When people forget about their ability to choose, they learn to be helpless. Their whole lives become a function of other people's choices. This is the way of the non-essentialist. Choice is the essence of essentialism. Essentialists embrace the power of choice, no matter the situation in which they find themselves. Essentialists always remember that they have the ability to make choices. They never give up their right to choose. Chapter 3. Be open to the idea of doing less and see trade-offs as a part of life. If you had the opportunity to travel back in time and build wealth by investing in a company, which would you choose? IBM, Microsoft, Apple? While the enormous success these companies have enjoyed over the years might make them an obvious pick for some, Southwest Airlines would have actually given you the biggest return on your investment. The truth is, Southwest Airlines displayed a remarkable level of success for a period by focusing on one of the key principles of essentialism, doing only a few important things very well. Instead of offering their customers some additional choices, like first-class seating, meals, and seat reservations, Southwest Airlines focused on one thing, flying people from one point to another, and that's it, no frills necessary. They realized that they would surely fail if they tried to do everything. However, by focusing on doing a few things excellently, like getting travelers to their destinations, then they could be successful. Adopting this approach can prove to be difficult, as it means being willing and able to make trade-offs. While it might sound easy enough to cut out unnecessary tasks and leave only the most important, in reality, we just end up becoming convinced that we can do it all. For instance, when the success of Southwest Airlines became obvious, Continental Airlines decided to copy their strategy. Rather than cut back to a few vital essentials, however, Continental erroneously concluded that they could do it all. Their solution was to continue running their regular airline and create a separate brand, Continental Light, to provide the budget service. However, the operational inefficiencies that resulted from pursuing both strategies meant that Continental Light wasn't price competitive. In the end, they lost millions because they couldn't let go of the non-essential and concentrate on what was vital. Any organization that is set up for long-term success must embrace the reality of trade-offs, prioritizing one strategy over the other. Now that you have a clear concept of how far people often deviate from the path of essentialism, the following sections will show you what you can do to find the path again. Chapter 4. To learn to pick out the essential from the trivial, give yourself space to escape and see the bigger picture. It's quite difficult for anyone to be bored these days. Utilizing modern technologies like our smartphones, we can access a wealth of communication and entertainment. This sounds like a great thing since no one actually likes being bored. Boredom, however, can actually be good for you. A period in which you have nothing to do can give you a chance to think clearly about what you have to get done. To make sure you have that time, clear a break in your schedule daily to give yourself time to escape, to think. In fact, this technique was used by some of the greatest minds in history, such as Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. Both of them confined themselves in isolation in order to escape, therefore giving themselves the opportunity to think about their groundbreaking theories. Same goes for most of the successful CEOs out there today. They schedule a few hours of blank space in their calendar every day in order to do some thinking. However, escaping isn't just a way to separate essential responsibilities from the rest. You can also use it to make sure you remain focused on the big picture. Most times, people get so lost in the petty day-to-day tasks that they forget the reason they are doing those things in the first place. In order to maintain focus on what's relevant, Essentialism teaches us to always focus on the bigger picture. One way to achieve this is by keeping a journal. But instead of scribbling down everything you experience, force yourself to write as little as possible. This will make you think through everything you've done and sift out only what you deem essential. And as you read back through your journal notes, you will see the big picture surface. Chapter 5. Boost your creativity by playing, and make sure you take some time to rest. Unfortunately, having decided that play is something that is trivial and unproductive, adults tend to have a clear-cut boundary between work and play. Now, we believe play is there purely for entertainment and doesn't help us to advance our goals. Simply put, it's a waste of time. However, the Essentialist recognizes that play is an indispensable tool for inspiration. If you want to find out what's essential in your life, you can free your mind by playing so that you can approach any issue creatively. Here is how play relates to creativity. It helps us to form new connections between ideas that we would have never otherwise considered. It is a remedy for stress, which is one of the principal factors in unproductivity. It helps us to prioritize our responsibilities. We see the value of play exhibited in the culture of companies like Twitter, Pixar, and Google, who promote play by doing things like offering improv comedy classes or by decorating the office with thousands of Star Wars figurines or a huge dinosaur. The reason why they do this? Because they know that a playful employee is an inspired and productive one. But play, as important as it is, should never take priority over rest and sleep. Non-essentialists take sleep and play as the same thing. They see it as a luxury, a waste of potentially productive hours. This approach is completely backwards, as sleep enhances your ability to think, connect ideas, and maximize your productivity during your active hours. 1 hour of sleep actually leads to several more hours of higher productivity the next day. Did you know? Research at Harvard Medical School found that going 24 hours without sleep, or getting a weekly average of about 5 hours of sleep each night, results in a cognitive impairment equal to what you would have with a 0.1% blood alcohol level. Chapter 6. Don't let emotions get in the way of cutting out things that are not essential. We often make the mistake of thinking that all of our tasks and responsibilities are essential in one way or another. Surely you've gone through something similar when you're going through your closet during spring cleaning. You begin with the mindset that if I never wear it, it's got to go. However, you soon start making exceptions, telling yourself things like, I know I never wear this howling wolf shirt, but I might want to one day. So you decide to keep it, and the closet remains as jam-packed as ever. So how can you avoid making this mistake? In short, be very strict with your criteria. One way to do so is by utilizing the 90% rule. Start by considering the most relevant criterion for the decision you are making. For instance, if you're clearing out your closet, that criteria might be, do I still need this? Then score it on a scale of 0 and 100. With the 90% rule, anything below 90, even an 89 is a 0. After weighing all the options on a scale of 0 to 100, dump everything that scored less than 90. Essentialists put time into creating a system for removing obstacles, thereby making performance as easy as possible. Another approach is to conclude that if it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. An easy way to utilize this is to list the 3 minimum things that something must have in order to keep it, as well as 3 ideal criteria that you expect it to meet. Then, when making the decisions, something must pass 3 minimum requirements as well as at least 2 of the ideal ones. Thinking this way will surely let you avoid having trivial matters slip through. For instance, there is definitely no way that the Howling Wolf shirt in your closet would pass the 3 minimum requirements. Is it stylish? Would I wear it every day? Will no one laugh at me for wearing it? Chapter 7. Say no to non-essential tasks and plan the essential ones carefully. So, what do you do once you've made a list of all the things you need to do away with? That is, everything non-essential to achieving your goals. It's quite easy to throw away a shirt you never wear, but these decisions get a bit complicated when other people are involved. The right no said at the right time can alter the course of history. McKeown. We tend to find saying no very difficult, feeling both socially awkward as well as pressured not to disappoint the people around us. We are concerned that saying no might impair our relationships. However, we need to say no more often and reserve yes only for the things that really matter. To be able to do this, you'll need to treat the decision and the relationship as separate entities. The pain of saying no may bring about regret for about 10 minutes as you worry about someone else's disappointment or that you're missing out on something, but you might regret saying yes for much longer. Failing to say no to the things which aren't essential can cause you to miss out on great opportunities. Once you're used to saying no when it's in your best interest, you can concentrate on planning the remaining vital tasks. Get clear on your goals by having an essential intent, one primary objective that is both concrete and inspirational. Imagine that your goal is to end world hunger, for instance. This goal is not concrete at all, although very inspirational, and thus fails as your essential intent. Trying to avoid an object of this size will become unruly due to its vagueness. Now think about this goal. Build 150 affordable, environmentally friendly, storm-resistant homes for families living in the lower 9th Ward. This goal is specific, concrete, and also inspirational. One way to make sure your goal is clear is by asking yourself, how will I know when I've reached my goal? If I can give you a reasonable answer to this question, then you know you can have clarity about what you are doing. Chapter 8. Withdrawing from failures and setting boundaries will help you stop doing unnecessary things. Have you ever done something that you were sure was a waste of energy and time just because you committed to it? Many people fall into this sunk cost bias, the tendency to keep investing money, time, and energy into something we already know is not likely to succeed. Unluckily, every little investment makes it more difficult for us to let go, while concurrently increasing the amount we are sure to lose. To exemplify the sunk cost bias, consider the dramatic failure of the Concorde jet. Although it was an extraordinary engineering achievement, the cost made it worthless and doomed to commercial failure. Despite the glaring facts, the British and French governments fell into a sunk cost bias and continued funding it for 40 years, fully aware that they'd never get most of their money back. Only when we admit we have made a mistake in committing to something can we make a mistake a part of our past. McKeown. You can easily avoid this trap of sunk cost by developing the courage to admit your flaws and mistakes and let them go. Besides, you can avoid this whole situation by setting clear boundaries. While non-essentialists think boundaries are unnecessary constraints, boundaries are in fact liberating on a fundamental level. For instance, imagine a schoolyard on a busy street. At this school, children are only allowed to play in a small part of the yard next to the school building, and the teachers have to look after the children and ensure they stay within this boundary. But what if a fence was installed that clearly defined where the children can safely be? Then the teachers could do something better with their time, since they wouldn't have to be so concerned with children being near traffic, and the children could play freely within that space. Boundaries are there to make your life easier and more enjoyable, not constrain you. For instance, you could try setting a clear boundary between work and family. If your children aren't allowed in the office, then work shouldn't be allowed in your home. If it's obvious that something isn't going to work out, then do not hesitate to cut your losses and abandon ship. Chapter 9. The best way to maintain the essentials is by preparing carefully and eliminating what slows you down. Once you've started following the principles of essentialism, it's time to commit to the last step, execution. Becoming an essentialist does not only require you to identify what's slowing you down and simply finding ways to work around it, but to eliminate it completely. For instance, imagine that you're a Boy Scout leader and need to get your troop to camp before sunset. To keep things fair, each scout is carrying equal provisions in his backpack. But there's a problem. Some of the scouts are much faster than others, and therefore the group spreads out and the kids in the back risk getting left behind. Your first non-essential solution is to make stops every now and then so that the laggers can catch up. Next, you try moving the kids from the back into the front so everyone stays together, but this just slows everyone down. Finally, you see the essentialist solution. You take off some of the provisions in the slower kids' backpacks and put it in the fast kids' backpacks. There and then, you've eliminated the problem by thinking with the principles of essentialism. The way of the essentialist is to produce more by removing more, not by doing more. Also, you can prevent unnecessary hindrances by being prepared. One of our biggest mistakes is assuming that our plans will go as expected. However, an essentialist does not think this way. Instead, he makes the right preparations with the assumption that things might go wrong. Whatever you do, whether it's delivering a presentation at work or taking your kids to school, always give yourself a buffer of 50% of the time you assume it will take. This way, you can always leave room to fix anything that ends up slowing you down. Conclusion. We are so swamped with tasks and responsibilities that we find it difficult to set our priorities straight. It's downright tedious to identify which of the tasks on our to-do list are the most important to us. Even if we go through the list of tasks and pick out the ones we should prioritize, we still end up having too much on our hands. These excessive activities massively hinder our productivity. Fortunately, adopting essentialism can help us pinpoint what is most important to us and set our priorities straight. Remember that if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. McKeown. Regardless of how it might seem, only a few things are actually essential to our goals and well-being, and everything else is unimportant. We can create a life that is far more productive and fulfilling, so stop thinking that you need to accomplish everything, and choose instead specific directions in which you can excel. Focus on a particular area and make giant strides in the things that matter most to you, rather than stretching yourself thin trying to make little progress in many areas. Finally, make it a habit to always question yourself and update your plans subsequently. The process of determining what's essential and what's trivial is continuous. You can't just give a nod to the principle of essentialism every now and then. You have to practice it regularly in a disciplined manner. When you start seeing essentialism as a way of life, it becomes the very essence of who you are. Try this. Instead of constantly adding more and more duties and material possessions to your life, try to find ways to cut things out. You can make a list of criteria and eliminate things that do not meet them.